Support for this podcast comes from Eightfold AI. Eightfold AI's market-leading talent intelligence platform helps organizations retain top performers, upskill and reskill their workforce, recruit talent efficiently, and reach diversity goals. Eightfold's patented deep learning artificial intelligence platform is available in more than 155 countries and 24 languages, enabling cutting-edge enterprises to transform their talent into a competitive advantage. For more information, visit eightfold.ai.
There's been more of scientific discovery, more of technical advancement and material progress in your lifetime and mine than in all the ages of history.
Hi there, welcome to episode 665 of Recruiting Future with me, Matt Alder. In this disruptive time, HR must be perfectly aligned with the business strategy of its organisation. However, recent research from Eightfold AI and 360 Insights highlights a significant misalignment between the two. This misalignment creates challenges that impact everything from hiring to employee satisfaction and ultimately negatively impact long-term organisational success. So why is this misalignment happening? And what can HR leaders do to address it? Could AI help bridge the gap and drive better outcomes for both HR and the wider business? My guest this week is Teresa Wykes, Senior Director of Talent-Centered Transformation at Eightfold AI. Teresa shares valuable insights from the research, and we explore some of the root causes of this misalignment and assess potential solutions to the problem. Hi, Teresa, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for having me.
An absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Please, could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Sure. So my name's Teresa Wykes, and I joined Eightfold AI earlier this year. Eightfold AI is a talent intelligence platform that companies use to allow them to hire and develop their talent through automation and AI-driven insights. And I'm part of the talent-centered transformation team. What we do is work with organizations to support them through various aspects of their decision to partner with us. So that's things like moving from a transactional to a strategic talent approach, or becoming a skills-based organization, or using talent intelligence and everything that entails.
Eightfold have recently published it's a really interesting report. It's picking up on what you were saying about being strategic. It looks at really what we can only describe as the misalignment between HR and the strategy of the business. I mean, it's a really interesting read. I mean, how bad is that problem? And what are the implications of HR talent acquisition being so misaligned with the overall business's strategy?
Well, I'm glad you found it interesting, Matt. So first of all, let me just give a couple of bits of context to the survey, just to sort of clarify why we get involved in this. So, a survey like this will tell us quite a lot about the maturity of the HR market. And then in turn, that tells us a lot of things about HR sentiment towards AI and their propensity to look at new technology for their businesses. And it also tells us where they might be on their skills journey, for example. And we partnered with 360 so that we could be more objective about that. And, given our customers are mostly HR people, we really wanted to understand their alignment to their businesses, as we are discussing here today. So the survey gives us data that's current. That's obviously quite powerful. And I think, it's a given that at the moment the environment is uncertain and we all need to be dynamic and agile, etc. But what we really wanted was to look at what's creating those changes, so that we can think about how to make leadership better and how to optimize our workforces. And, at Eightfold, we want to be thought leaders. So we want to be at the vanguard of those conversations. And it's, you'll know this, it's a very lively time, especially right now and over the last couple of years as HR is redesigning itself. So I think broadly speaking, the survey's given us the opportunity to create a lot of inward reflection for HR about what the priorities should be. But getting into it, and to return to your question, and in terms of how bad the problem is, well, if we start with some numbers, so only 18%, that's 1 in 5 of HR leaders, and we had a sample of 500 for this survey, told us that they are fully aligned with the business. And that's based on how they integrate across three key areas. So that's business strategy development, C-suite collaboration, and talent strategy alignment. And then if we break that data down a little bit more, just to illustrate, 52% said that they regularly collaborate with the C-suite. So that would suggest a more proactive kind of driving approach to relationship management. Still only half, though, that are actually regularly collaborating with the C-suite. And then 38% say that they occasionally collaborate. So that's probably a more, reactive cohort there. And interestingly, 44% of the survey respondees said that their talent strategy was fully aligned to business objectives. 43% said mostly aligned. And now that's less than half. I think that's rather interesting and slightly daunting because, if you think talent is probably the most accountable part of HR because it is so measurable. So not brilliant, for less than half to be aligned to the business. But I think, in terms of how serious that is, well, obviously downstream, it's going to have effects on the efficacy of any talent strategy, the overall organization and general business needs. 69% of the respondents said that they were a bit worried about their ability to keep up with the pace of change in their company. And also alongside that, keeping up with the HR needs of their employees. And obviously, that's not great because the longer HR remains misaligned, that's going to get worse. So we are going to cover, some more of that later. At the same time, though, we looked at employee satisfaction. I think these two go hand in hand. And that employee satisfaction in this survey came out at 61%. So, very well documented that low employee satisfaction will negatively impact performance. Then if you're not happy for work, you look elsewhere. And we found in our survey that actually 82% of all employees admitted to looking for a new job in the last 12 to 18 months. And, no surprise, pay and culture were the leading drivers for that. And then another misalignment, these employee numbers, juxtapose the 3 out of 4 HR leaders in the survey who report that they had what it takes to help employees grow in their role, yet they still struggle with staffing challenges. So I think, there's something there quite big about the fact that current HR and corporate initiatives are a bit out of step with what employees need and want, and they're thinking with their feet. So yeah, that's a sort of overview of the negativity of this situation.
Yeah, I mean, there are some quite scary numbers there in terms of how bad some of that sort of misalignment is, and as you say, the implications are pretty serious. What do you think's causing this? Because I'm sure that no one does this on purpose. So, what do you think's some of the root causes behind it?
There's a lot of noise at the moment about what HR should be, what talent should be, how it's changed, etc. I think for HR and business alignment, it has to come back to communication and how HR is working with other departments. I think it also raises the question of to what extent HR ensures that they are actually properly understanding the company's strategic goals and how they go about that. It might also be something about maintaining an administrative culture rather than aspiring to represent strategic initiatives. And I think there's a big one as well about the language that's used to communicate with the business. I think HR needs to look at whether it is data literate as opposed to being data driven, which is something different. Is HR using data that's good? Is it relevant? How is that data being used to inform decisions? It's probably HR's job to be the ones who own the understanding of the talent market, not the business. So how they use this knowledge is very, very important. And I think that might tell you whether the business perceives HR as a purely transactional or compliance-focused function rather than a true strategic partner in driving business success. And HR often gets sidelined because they hired the wrong people, but actually it's up to HR to make sure that the business has the right idea in the first place. And that's down to how they set expectations through data and reality checking. I think there's often the business only knows what they know, whereas HR has actually got access to the whole of the market. So why would they not, use that information to coach and set the truth of what's actually out there? So I think, big piece there about relationships, aptitude to be aligned to the business. Does HR know how to be aligned to the business in the first place? I think sometimes it's not happening because people don't know how to do it, rather than they're just not doing it, or they're focusing on something different. And I do think as well, Matt, there might be something as well about the way that we're working at the moment. It's not so much about, whichever side of the fence you sit on about remote working or return to office, it's definitely got consequences for how not only relationships are built and maintained, but how information gets communicated and passed around teams. And I think I'd also say that, HR does tend to focus on short-term wins, or maybe, incremental steps towards a result. And that then gets reflected in the way it gets measured on, short-term factors. Whereas I think, taking a more strategic view will just give HR more to work with, and is more aligned with perhaps where the business is going.
A really interesting sort of section of the report illustrates that HR is actually deprioritizing areas and activities that could actually help them achieve their objectives. Take us through what's happening there.
That's right. So we asked a set of questions around the relative importance that HR leaders are giving to various topics. So they ranked understanding their workforce's skills and capabilities as the second most crucial factor. The first most crucial factor was retaining top performers. However, our survey said that gaining a better understanding of the skills makeup of their talent networks was actually last on their priority list for the next 12 to 18 months. So just to give you a bit more detail here, because I think it is interesting. So top business priorities for HR leaders are recruiting better candidates to the talent pool, lowering turnover, and identifying high potentials to promote internally. And again, not surprisingly, recruitment marketing platforms consistently rank as a top investment, especially amongst those who are quite advanced with their AI deployment. At the same time, HR leaders said their bottom three organizational priorities were speeding up the hiring process, analyzing workforce data, and better understanding the skills makeup. So straight away, there's a disconnect there, because the bottom three priorities would actually help address the top three priorities. So, there's something's not getting its act together there. And I think, 1 in 5, that's 20% of HR leaders saying they have little to no insight into the skills makeup of their workforce. The correct skills data is just not being looked at. And what that means is that their hiring practices are actually not backed up by anything tactical or anything strategic, hence misalignment.
Just to go back to something you were talking about earlier and just dig a little bit deeper into that employee satisfaction issue, because that's such a big thing. I mean, what other insights did you kind of get around that and the causes of it?
This survey, employee satisfaction, came out 61%. And, there's all sorts of internet rabbit holes you can go down to benchmark that. But in terms of implications of that figure, incidentally, Gallup estimated an $8.9 trillion shortfall on productivity coming out of that, which is pretty massive. So that's actually a 9% loss of productivity through people not showing up to work. I don't mean literally not showing up. I mean, in an engaged way. And if you're disengaged, you're also not going to be inclined to grow or develop yourself proactively, which is further wastage. So, it does have quite serious consequences. But, in our survey, the quoted causes were fairly standard: inadequate money, poor work-life balance, and lack of career development as significant concerns. We did find that people who have a shorter length of service, so lower tenure, has the lowest satisfaction, and women are less satisfied than men. And then if we look at what the HR leaders have to say about that, well, half of those leaders that we surveyed said that gaining a better understanding of their talent network was a priority. So, as well as recruiting better people and retaining top employees. But then, the survey does indicate that the execution of addressing these priorities is actually quite hurtful to the employees' perception of them and their overall execution. And I think HR just needs to catch up a bit with employee needs and, that culture of where the employer tells you what you're all about and what you need. It's a bit out now, I think. Um, uh, the company priority is making sure that you retain the right people, but I don't think that intention is getting through to the workforce because they're nearly all looking for a new job. And I think as well, there just needs to be a bit more nuance and attention to detail around some of this. Things like, generational diversity in terms of needs and expectations, because we are going to start seeing a lot of shortfalls directly related to generational cohorts and their skills. And that gets expressed in different attitudes towards work and indicators of engagement across different generations. If you're a you're part of the younger generation, you're probably more interested in the meaning that your work gives you, whereas if you're older, it might be more about benefits. So it's getting closer to your workforce, treating them as people with needs and wants, just having a bit more of a kind of service culture, I think, both to your workforce, but also to your business.
Absolutely. So let's kind of sort of look at this look at this as a whole, I suppose, in terms of the the misalignment and everything that's going on. And I don't think any of this will be a surprise to anyone listening, because I think they've probably all experienced aspects of this. What's the solution? I mean, is this something that AI and technology could solve? And if so, how might it do that?
I think it can, Matt. I think first of all, I think sometimes it's better to rely on the talent that you already have rather than looking outside. And I think if organizations don't know what skills they need for the future, there's ways that you can look at that. A good plan and good technology can support a great hiring experience for hiring leaders and the talent themselves. There are ways that you can meet those expectations. And I think a lot of that is about increased awareness, increased insight, better data, and investing in the right areas. But, that takes effort and capital, and I talked earlier about, greater attention to detail. I do also think that there are a few things that need to be returned to in terms of the basics here. And I think some of these things might mean that we decide there's a different set of skills required for HR to be aligned. And that might be met by seeing more lateral moves from other parts of the business into HR, for example. We're seeing that already. I think there's something as well about HR and talent needing to be there early in the conversations, having the confidence to insist that they are part of those conversations so that they can manage expectations about delivery. And then that means they can make a plan at the right time, and, fulfill their job, which is to make sure that the company's got the right people on board to deliver business goals in the right way. But yes, AI certainly can help solve it, and there are a few ways. So you can use AI to give you a view of the whole talent lifecycle. And that's going to mean that you can plan and plan efficiently, and you can be strategic rather than reactive, which again aligns you more strategically to the business. You can use AI to predict future talent needs and also current skills gaps. And that gives you data to share with the business. That data also might help you challenge assumptions that are incorrect or exaggerated about the existence of talent in the outside market. Again, you're coming closer to the business. You're helping them support their own goals. You can use AI to identify people in your existing workforce who are ready for upskilling or reskilling. And that's good for engagement, as well as cost effective in avoiding external hiring. So you're speaking the language of cost with the business there. Again, you'll be more aligned. And then finally, you can actually use AI to let your teams find opportunities or projects themselves. So that's empowering and engaging. If they're more engaged, they're more productive. If they're more productive, they're more aligned to the commercial aims of the business. And so much of this is about data. So talent intelligence, workforce analytics are growing. I think there's still quite a long way to go. But yeah, that I think starting to look at the way that technology can help you with some of these issues is a really good place to start.
So, I mean, there are some amazing tools and some, very different and interesting thinking, and as you say, potentially new skills that kind of really need to come in and solve these issues. What steps can organisations take to deal with resistance to, what's a pretty big change in terms of all of those things, and overcome, the barriers to implementing this kind of thing successfully?
That's such a massive question. I do think, again, it comes back to how you partner with the business. And, that's things like how you go about building trust, the vocabulary that you use, how you create your case using data, and then relating your work to the business's work. Explaining how HR tasks and activity directly impact business goals, up-leveling to a strategic viewpoint, having the confidence to challenge in an appropriate and robust way using data that's relevant and representative. But ultimately, any resistance just needs breaking down, and it's all about alignment, aligning HR's work to individual goals held by business leaders, for example, something like that.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. What do you think the future looks like? Or what do you hope the future looks like? What might technology make it possible to do in, say, 5 years' time?
I reckon if we did the survey again in a few years' time, I think the questions would probably look a bit different, given the pace of change, especially for this current year. So the outcomes would probably look a bit different. And alongside that, I think there's also scope for a new set of KPIs for HR and talent acquisition, talent management, and some of that's already happening now. So in the context of that, in practical terms, we're probably looking at questions around even more automation. So if that properly takes off, then the thing to watch is whether HR actually does take the bait to be strategic and whether it has the capability to be strategic in the right way. I think obviously a lot more and a lot better tailored interfaces for a better user experience. So, maybe the questions will explore how people are working with the technology versus the parts of their work that AI won't be supporting. And I think that, and it's not my idea, but it's one I agree with, that, a new or a greater part of HR's remit could be around owning the relationship employees have with AI and how that's working. And obviously that has consequences for what people do all day long. Those are just some thoughts on that.
So lastly, where can people find a full copy of the report?
So the full survey report is on our website, eightfold.ai. Everything is there to read. Full survey report, should be interesting and relevant for many people.
Absolutely. Teresa, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thanks, Matt.
My thanks to Teresa. You can follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can search all the past episodes at recruitingfuture.com. On that site, you can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter, Recruiting Future Feast, and get the inside track on everything that's coming up on the show. This is the last episode of Recruiting Future for 2024, and I want to thank everyone who's listened, shared, been interviewed, or sponsored. I'll be back next year, and I hope you'll join me.
There's been more of scientific discovery, more of technical advancement and material progress in your lifetime and mine than in all the ages of history.